Namaskar. I'm indeed privileged and thankful to two of my colleagues, Captain Harinder and Captain Anish, under the tutelage of the Nautical Advisor, Captain Azad, and with the CMMI, to initiate this workshop, which I personally envisage with the distillate of wisdom that is available both here physically in this room and also online, would result in a tangible and a meaningful action framework. I'm grateful to Shri Ajit Sukmaranji as the Chief Surveyor to have flagged how critical it is to have an effective response mechanism for a crisis which should not blow up into something that exponentially is not manageable. I'm also grateful to Captain Azad for having very crisply pointed out the deliverables at this forum. We have had serious time spillage because 10 to 10:30 was for the first incident, so I'll be as brief as possible. Stepping back from the perspective on salvage and just highlighting how the Indian Maritime Administration is looking at the challenges ahead. What's codified in the growth trajectory, which is embedded within the Indian economic growth story, is available in the open domain, and I will not repeat that because it is very succinct with key action points and deliverables. This is the Maritime India Vision and the Amritkal Vision 2047. And this builds on all the good work like former Nautical Advisor Mr. Panda, erstwhile colleagues, and the continuum. So 75 years of dedicated service to the nation as DG Shipping is also being celebrated. We request you to partake in those celebrations also, while also understanding the transition from DG Shipping to the Directorate General of Maritime Administration. Now this will not dilute the focus on mercantile marine as in shipping and shipping operations, but also deepen the engagement in terms of ships and ports interface with ports. It will also extend the statutory and regulatory framework for compliances and for audit to shipyards, ship recycling centers, with the Hong Kong Convention kicking in, India being positioned as the global best destination for ship recycling, also for offshore operations, as there's huge potential in our EEZ, not just for exploration but also for supplementing your renewable energy input. On the decarbonization front, if I am permitted to just submit, we very recently, coming fresh from hosting His Excellency the Secretary General of the IMO at the Green Shipping Conclave, came out with 3 specific documents which are a consultative framework under the lead of the Chief Surveyor Shri Ajit Kumar Sukmaranji, with IMEI as a strong support in the entire event. Here we have the collated National Green Shipping Policy. It's a consultative draft, and we would want the industry to dissect it, logically go through what is being collated, and connect with the decarbonization engagement that Indian Maritime oversees. With IRS, which has been kind enough to host this workshop today, we have come out with a Future Fuels Maritime. And separately, just next door at the Shipping Corporation of India Maritime Training Institute, upgrading that into a center of excellence for sustainable maritime transport with multiple verticals. Now, if you look at how this connect on decarbonization is going, a parallel is being worked out here for the wreck and Salvage Action Framework. Under the lead of the Nautical Advisor, we are looking at a complete upgradation of the LRIT. The DGCom is being upgraded into a 24/7 interface which will have a crisis management portal under the direct control and command of the Casualty Response Officer, that is Captain Harinder for now. Since India is positioning itself as one of the largest seafarers contributing nation, we are looking at 12.5% presently to an aggressive 25%, meaning one Indian seafarer for every 4 seafarers, or a conservative 20%, 1 out of every 5 seafarers. So 24/7 grievance response mechanism for the human element while working on the just transition when you have technology transitioning in the shipping sector. We have initiated memorandum of understandings with industry think tanks like OKIMF, Intertanko, with the PNI Club. We have also brought in platforms which will deepen the engagement in terms of compliances for ISPS and for the Navigational Safety Port Committee. There are, under the ministry, multiple Neel Earth Vision committees which are aggregating the key action agendas. Now coming to salvage, and I will be very brief again. If you look at the journey, it has started way back early with shipping per se. 1910, you had basically the Brussels Convention, which had a framework which was no cure, no pay. That transitioned with a dialogue which extended for 90 years into the Salvage Convention in 1989. That too basically to be formally acceded to and become a convention had a journey from 89 to 96. Now you have essentially the Scopic in the Lloyd's Open form. And apart from the issues of the SCR who basically fills up the form and interfaces with the Maritime Administration, what was underlined here was what Ajit Sukumaran sir had said. Perhaps the bias or the tilt is largely for commercial interests rather than environment or national interests. Now this tilt is what is being attempted to be corrected by forums such as this, so that we give the first priority to national interests and environmental concerns. The Indian coastline, both on the east and west, 7,500 kilometers, is only going to see more and more traffic density. Please realize, as a nation, we will continue importing oil because we are energy dependent on our energy spread there. Now looking at the legal framework, you have Part 13 of the Merchant Shipping Act 1958 that defines basically wrecks and salvage. And it does it in a very loose manner. You have the Salvage and Wreck Rules 1974. These are being upgraded, as I mentioned, in the similar context of what's happening in the transition from DG shipping on the MS Act 1958 to what is proposed in the MS Bill 2024 for a more aggressive and hands-on engagement for a responsible maritime administration. Before coming to the deliverables, I would like to sincerely place on record our appreciation and our very deep gratitude to our brothers in arms, firstly the Coast Guard and also the Indian Navy. Words will not define what the first respondents, who are the custodians for the MRCC, have been doing. You will be going through sessions such as the Merck's Frankfurter. You will realize for a carrier having extremely dangerous cargo, which basically was on fire, to douse that fire, 8 to 10 nautical miles off the coast continuously by deployment of manpower, trying to sequester the manpower on board while giving it everything. The synergy is so good. As the first responder, DGCom intimating even for collisions with fishing vessels, the ability to reach out, caution a particular vessel, board the vessel if needed, respond basically in terms of humanitarian crisis elements. The rescue that was done by the Indian Navy off the coast of Oman. Now there are problems here too. In that particular vessel, our antiquated IT stack showed the seafarers in some other vessel. So there are many slip between the cup and lip, in the sense that everything is not hunky-dory. We need to rectify that. Having said this, what we keenly look forward for is evolving our consultative standard operating procedures for emergency response and salvage facilitation. This includes the entire chronology from the first point of contact of intimation right down to the entire deployment of the salvage activity and closure, which includes concepts such as the port of refuge, the port entry rules, where issues are actually happening in terms of customs basically clearing equipment which has to be brought in from abroad, which are high pressure firefighters in the case of Merck's Frankfurter. The second thing is, throughout the east and west coast, we are looking at the concept of alpha tugs. Right now, the ETVs are only one each, and they eat in heavily to the limited financial resources that DG Shipping has. However, they are there and they are operationalized when Coast Guard gives the deployment requirement. And they have been deployed effectively, because that is what the nautical advisor had mentioned. Multiple cases, what is needed to ensure your coasts are safe and incident free, they have been deployed. However, something needs to also be done by private operators. So we are trying to position this concept of alpha tugs, which basically are there on each of the ports, and there's nothing very big to be done on each of these tugs. It is simply seagoing ability and a necessary bollard pull, and the vessel being manned appropriately so that the crew that is manning it is able to basically reach out for any contingency, supplement what the emergency tug vessel that has been provisioned by the administration. The other thing we are looking at is a hazard zonation. It was mentioned by Captain Azad, the vagaries of the sea, which neither can any administration control, like the southwest monsoon, issues which happen with vessels, and compliances. Now, in these hazard zonation and operational parameters and enforcing those for all commercial shipping operations is a mandate that needs to emerge from here, because prevention is always better than having to basically repent at leisure. Then, of course, a continued dialogue is of essence, because everything that is done is not one individual but a collective, and professionally that elevates the stature and the engagement, and that is where this distillate as an action framework coming would be taken forward. I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I look forward to the outcomes and wish these deliberations the very best. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.